He won a Super Bowl and admitted he did not even want the job. He took over a dynasty built by someone else, watched the players coach themselves, collected a championship ring, and walked away before everything collapsed. The owner who hired him later called it the biggest mistake of his career. This man is widely considered the luckiest coach in NFL history, and he is the #1 name on this list. But before we expose him, you need to understand something uncomfortable about professional football. Winning a Super Bowl does not mean you are a great coach. Sometimes it means you inherited greatness. Sometimes it means your coordinator was the real genius. Sometimes it means you simply got out of the way while Hall of Fame players did everything. These 10 coaches won championships, and every single one of them has a secret that the NFL does not want you to know. January 17, 1971, Super Bowl V. The Baltimore Colts defeated the Dallas Cowboys 16-13 in one of the ugliest championship games ever played. 11 combined turnovers, sloppy offense from both teams, a last-second field goal to win it all. The Colts' head coach was Don McCafferty, and almost nobody remembers he existed. Here is why Don McCafferty opens this list. He did not build that Colts team. Don Shula did. Shula had coached Baltimore for 7 seasons, developing the roster, installing the systems, creating the culture. Then Shula left for Miami, and the Colts handed the job to his assistant. McCafferty inherited Johnny Unitas. He inherited a defense that had dominated the NFL for years. He inherited a championship-caliber team and simply did not ruin it. One season later, the Colts went 10-4. The season after that, McCafferty was fired after a 1-4 start. His career head coaching record was 22 wins, 10 losses, and 1 tie. Respectable. But the Super Bowl ring came from a roster he did not assemble and a culture he did not create. Don McCafferty was a fine coach, but he was not the reason Baltimore won that championship. He was simply the man holding the clipboard when greatness arrived. And if McCafferty benefited from inheriting a Legends team, the next coach benefited from something even more valuable, the greatest show anyone had ever seen. Dick Vermeil is famous for 2 things: crying and winning Super Bowl 34 with the St. Louis Rams. The tears came constantly. Press conferences, post-game interviews, team meetings. Vermeil wept openly and often. The media loved it. The emotional coach who wore his heart on his sleeve. The man who cared so deeply that he could not contain himself. But here is what the emotional narrative ignores. Dick Vermeil did not create the greatest show on turf. Mike Martz did. Martz was the offensive coordinator. He designed the plays. He schemed the formations. He turned Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, and Torrey Holt into the most explosive offense in NFL history. Vermeil managed the locker room and cried on camera. Before St. Louis, Dick Vermeil spent 7 seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles. His record was 54 wins and 47 losses. 1 Super Bowl appearance that ended in defeat. Then he burned out and retired for 15 years. He returned to coaching in 1997 and inherited a Rams team that went 4-12 the year before. 2 seasons later, with Martz calling plays, the Rams won the Super Bowl. Vermeil retired again immediately after the championship, leaving Martz to take over. The Rams remained elite without him. The offense continued dominating without him. Because Dick Vermeil was never the engine. He was the hood ornament. Crying does not equal coaching. Emotion does not equal strategy. Dick Vermeil was a passenger on a championship driven by someone else. But at least Vermeil had the sense to step aside. The next coach stayed too long and exposed how little he actually contributed.
Gary Kubiak won Super Bowl 50 with the Denver Broncos. The final score was 24-10 over the Carolina Panthers. Peyton Manning rode off into the sunset with the championship. Here is what actually happened in that game. Peyton Manning completed 13 of 23 passes for 141 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, a quarterback rating of 56. Manning was not good. Manning was not even functional. Manning was a shell of himself, playing through injuries that had destroyed his arm strength. The Denver Broncos won Super Bowl 50 because of their defense. Von Miller recorded 2.5 sacks and forced 2 fumbles. The Broncos held Carolina's MVP quarterback Cam Newton to 18 points below his season average. The defense scored a touchdown. The defense created constant pressure. The defense won that championship. Gary Kubiak's role was to not get in the way. His career tells the truth. Kubiak spent 8 seasons as head coach of the Houston Texans before Denver. His record was 61 wins and 64 losses, no playoff victories. He built nothing sustainable. He developed nothing memorable. One season with Denver's historic defense gave him a ring. Health problems forced him to retire shortly after. Gary Kubiak was a good man and a decent coordinator, but his Super Bowl victory belonged to Von Miller and a defense that would have won with almost anyone holding the headset. The next coach also won with an all-time defense, but he had something else, the most dominant team in NFL history, and he still almost ruined it.
The 1985 Chicago Bears might be the greatest team ever assembled. Their defense changed football forever. The 46 scheme terrorized quarterbacks. Mike Singletary led with fury. Richard Dent collected sacks like souvenirs. The Super Bowl shuffle became a cultural phenomenon. Their coach was Mike Ditka, and Mike Ditka did not run that defense. Buddy Ryan did. Ryan was the defensive coordinator. He created the 46 scheme. He motivated the players. He built the mentality that made opposing offenses terrified to step on the field. When the Bears destroyed the New England Patriots 46-10 in Super Bowl 20, Buddy Ryan's defense held New England to 7 rushing yards. 7 yards on the ground for an entire game. Mike Ditka handled the offense and the media. Buddy Ryan handled everything that mattered. But here is where Ditka's limitations became obvious. After the Super Bowl, Buddy Ryan left to become head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. The Bears' defense declined immediately. Chicago never reached the Super Bowl again under Ditka, and then came New Orleans. Mike Ditka became head coach of the Saints in 1997. In 3 seasons, his record was 15 wins and 33 losses. He traded an entire draft to select Ricky Williams. The move was so disastrous that it crippled the franchise for years. Ditka was fired and never coached again. The Super Bowl champion exposed as unable to build anything without Buddy Ryan's genius. The tough guy image revealed as empty without Hall of Fame defenders covering for his limitations. Mike Ditka was a great player and an entertaining personality, but his coaching resume contains one brilliant season created by someone else and a trail of failure everywhere else. The next coach had an even stranger path to his championship. He beat his own team. John Gruden won Super Bowl 37 by defeating the Oakland Raiders. This would be impressive if John Gruden had not spent the previous 4 seasons coaching the Oakland Raiders. Gruden knew Oakland's playbook because he wrote it. He knew their audibles because he invented them. He knew their tendencies because he had drilled them into the players for years. When Rich Gannon changed play at the line, Tampa Bay's defense knew exactly what was coming. The Buccaneers intercepted Gannon 5 times. 3 were returned for touchdowns. The final score was 48-21. It was not a football game. It was an execution of a team by their former coach who knew every secret they had. Here is what happened after that Super Bowl. John Gruden never won another playoff game in Tampa Bay. 6 more seasons, 0 playoff victories. His record after the championship was 45 wins and 51 losses. The Buccaneers fired him in 2009. A decade later, Gruden returned to the Raiders. The results were catastrophic. A record of 22 wins and 31 losses. A scandal involving leaked emails that forced his resignation. The man who won a Super Bowl could not build a winner when he did not have an opponent's entire playbook memorized. John Gruden is celebrated as a Super Bowl champion, but his championship came with an asterisk the size of Oakland. He beat a team he had built himself using information no other coach would have possessed, and he never accomplished anything meaningful again. The next coach also had questions about who deserved credit for his championship because the real offensive genius left immediately after. Doug Peterson won Super Bowl 52 with the Philadelphia Eagles. Nick Foles outdueled Tom Brady in one of the greatest championship games ever played. The Philly Special became an iconic trick play. Philadelphia celebrated its first Super Bowl in franchise history. The offensive coordinator who designed that attack was Frank Reich. Reich called the Philly Special. Reich constructed the game plan that shredded New England's defense. Reich was the mastermind behind an offense that scored 41 points against the greatest dynasty in football. 1 year later, Frank Reich left to become head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, and Doug Peterson's Eagles began falling apart. The season after Reich left, Philadelphia went 9-7, then 9-7 again, then 4-11 before Peterson was fired. The offense that had dazzled in the Super Bowl became stagnant and predictable without Reich designing the schemes. Doug Peterson deserves credit for managing the locker room during a championship run. He deserves credit for trusting Nick Foles. He deserves credit for approving the Philly Special when it mattered most. But the offensive brilliance belonged to Frank Reich. When Reich left, the brilliance left with him. Doug Peterson was eventually exposed as a coach who needed a genius coordinator to mask his limitations. He has since rebuilt his reputation in Jacksonville, but his Super Bowl will always have Reich's fingerprints all over it. Speaking of fingerprints, the next coach inherited so much talent that even his own players admitted the roster coached itself.
George Seifert won 2 Super Bowls with the San Francisco 49ers. His overall record was 98 wins and 30 losses. His winning percentage is one of the highest in NFL history. George Seifert inherited everything from Bill Walsh. Walsh built the West Coast offense. Walsh developed Joe Montana. Walsh created the culture. Walsh assembled the roster. Walsh won 3 Super Bowls. Then Walsh retired, and George Seifert stepped into a dynasty already constructed. Seifert's first season, the 49ers went 14-2 and won Super Bowl 24. The roster was loaded. Montana was in his prime. The system was perfected. Seifert managed what already existed. His second Super Bowl came in 1994 with Steve Young, another quarterback developed by Bill Walsh. The 49ers had added Deion Sanders and other stars to an already dominant roster. Seifert was coaching a team that could have won with almost anyone holding the clipboard. Then came Carolina. The Panthers hired Seifert in 1999. Without Walsh's infrastructure, without Hall of Fame quarterbacks, without inherited greatness, George Seifert went 16 wins and 32 losses. He was fired after 2 seasons. 2 Super Bowl rings in San Francisco, complete failure in Carolina. The difference was not George Seifert. The difference was Bill Walsh's shadow. Some coaches build dynasties. Some coaches inherit them. George Seifert inherited 2 championships and proved unable to create anything on his own. But at least Seifert won with great quarterbacks. The next coach won a Super Bowl while calling himself an offensive genius, despite having one of the worst offenses in football. Brian Billick wrote a book called Developing an Offensive Game Plan. He was hired by the Baltimore Ravens because of his reputation as an offensive mastermind who coordinated the Minnesota Vikings' historic 1998 attack. The Ravens won Super Bowl 35 with an offense that ranked 16th in the league. Their quarterback was Trent Dilfer. Their rushing attack was average. Their passing game was invisible. Brian Billick's offensive genius produced nothing resembling genius. But the Ravens had something else, the greatest defense in NFL history. Ray Lewis led a unit that allowed only 165 points in 16 games, 10 points per game. Opposing offenses simply could not function. The Ravens won Super Bowl 35 24-7 because their defense smothered everything. Billick's offensive genius was so absent that the Ravens cut their Super Bowl winning quarterback immediately after the championship. Trent Dilfer won a ring and lost his job because Billick could not build an offense good enough to justify keeping him. In 9 seasons as Ravens head coach, Billick never developed a functional passing attack. He rode Ray Lewis and the defense to relevance. When the defense aged, the Ravens collapsed. Billick was fired in 2007 and never coached again. An offensive genius who could not run an offense. A Super Bowl champion carried entirely by his defense. Brian Billick proved that reputation and reality are not the same thing. The next coach had the opposite problem.
He had the most talented quarterback of his generation and completely wasted him. Mike McCarthy had Aaron Rodgers for 13 seasons. Aaron Rodgers might be the most talented quarterback to ever play professional football. His arm talent is supernatural. His decision-making is elite. His ability to extend plays is unmatched. Mike McCarthy won 1 Super Bowl with him. 1. Tom Brady won 6. Joe Montana won 4. Terry Bradshaw won 4. Mike McCarthy had a quarterback many consider the most gifted ever and produced 1 championship. The problems were obvious to everyone watching. Conservative play calling when aggression was needed. Refusal to adapt the offense to modern concepts. Clock management disasters in critical moments. Green Bay would build leads and then watch McCarthy call runs into the line while opponents clawed back. The 2014 NFC Championship game against Seattle should have sent McCarthy to the Super Bowl. The Packers led 22-7 in the third quarter. McCarthy coached scared. Seattle came back and won in overtime. The 2016 NFC Championship game against Atlanta. Rodgers played brilliantly. McCarthy's game plan could not keep up. The Falcons won 44-21. Year after year, Aaron Rodgers dragged teams deep into the playoffs. Year after year, Mike McCarthy found ways to lose. The greatest quarterback of his generation spent his prime watching lesser quarterbacks win championships because their coaches were not afraid. Finally, Green Bay fired McCarthy in 2018. Rodgers has not won a Super Bowl since. The window closed while McCarthy called draw plays on 3rd and long. 1 ring, 13 years, the greatest waste of quarterback talent in modern football history. But at least McCarthy coached his own team. The number 1 name on this list inherited a dynasty he did not build and admitted he never wanted the job in the first place.
Barry Switzer replaced Jimmy Johnson. That sentence explains everything about his Super Bowl victory. Jimmy Johnson built the Dallas Cowboys dynasty from nothing. He drafted Emmitt Smith. He drafted Michael Irvin. He drafted Troy Aikman. He developed the roster. He created the culture. He won 2 consecutive Super Bowls with a team he constructed piece by piece. Then, Jerry Jones fired him because of ego. Barry Switzer walked into a locker room full of Hall of Famers and did almost nothing. Players openly admitted that they coached themselves. Meetings lacked structure. Discipline collapsed. The Cowboys became known for off-field disasters because Switzer could not control the chaos. And they still won Super Bowl 30. The roster was too talented to fail. Aikman, Smith, and Irvin carried the offense. The defense remained elite. Barry Switzer collected a ring while barely holding the organization together. Here is what Switzer himself admitted. He never wanted to leave college football. He took the Cowboys' job because Jerry Jones offered it, not because he burned to coach in the NFL. He was comfortable at Oklahoma, winning with his own system. Dallas was a favor to a friend. 1 season after the Super Bowl, the Cowboys lost in the divisional round. The next season, they lost in the divisional round again. The dynasty crumbled. Switzer resigned after the 1997 season with a roster in shambles and a reputation destroyed. Jerry Jones later called hiring Switzer his biggest regret. The owner who fired Jimmy Johnson admitted that replacing him with Barry Switzer was a catastrophic mistake. Barry Switzer is the only head coach in history to win a national championship in college and a Super Bowl in the pros. That achievement sounds legendary until you understand the context. He inherited a dynasty at its peak, watched it coach itself to 1 more championship, and then watched it collapse under his leadership. The luckiest Super Bowl champion in NFL history. The least deserving ring ever awarded. Barry Switzer won the ultimate prize and did absolutely nothing to earn it. 10 Super Bowl champions, 10 coaches holding trophies they may not have deserved. Some inherited greatness, some had coordinators doing the real work, some wasted generational talent and escaped with just enough glory to hide their failures.
The NFL celebrates championships as the ultimate measure of coaching greatness, but championships do not tell the whole story. Context matters, circumstance matters. The difference between genius and luck is often invisible to fans watching from the outside. These 10 men have rings. These 10 men have legacies, but these 10 men also have secrets that complicate everything we think we know about winning. The next time you see a coach holding the Lombardi Trophy, ask yourself a question. Did he build this or did he inherit it? The answer might change how you see football forever.